Hello, Carol's Little World fans. It's me, Carol, and I'm here with another session as part of the Austin Studio Tour. This one is called Beautiful Under Heaven, and it's a visual exploration of Guilin, China. I'm very happy to reveal that this will be the cover of my upcoming book. It's still tentative yet. We're still in the design phases of my book, but I'm very excited to reveal I'm working with a book designer. And this will hopefully be the cover of my book. My book will be coming out soon. It's to be titled Beautiful Under Heaven. And it is a visual exploration of Guilin, China. In 2017, I had traveled to Guilin as part of a journey with an experienced photographer named Tillman Crane, who was invited there by the government in Beijing to travel through China, and I was part of that exploration. I got to stay in Guilin itself, and as part of that tour, I had a Pengyu or friend who was a guide, and I traveled throughout the city and throughout the surrounding areas around Guilin. I stayed in Guilin. I maintained a residence in Guilin, but also traveled outside to some of the surrounding areas, like the Longshan rice terraces and this place, which is a mountain retreat along the Li River south of Guilin. So where does the phrase beautiful under heaven come from? Apart from it being the title of my upcoming book, which I'm really excited about, there's an old Chinese proverb that proclaims Guilin scenery is the most beautiful under heaven. And it's an ancient proverb. Guilin is an old city. It's established for thousands of years. My book is going to be a collection of images exploring the city and its surrounding areas. The landscape of Guilin was often depicted in ancient Chinese brush paintings, one of which is celebrated on the back of China's 20 yuan bill, which is the most common currency in China. It's really, there's a history of having these brush paintings and the landscape of Guilin being representative of China itself. You can also see it on the cover of my book. That's the mountains there. Guilin is actually a natural nodal point. It's built along the Li River, and it's a crossroads really where northern and southern cultures in China come together. It's in the Guangxi region of China, so it's central South China. China is a very large country, and a lot of people, when they think of China, they think of some of the very large cities like Beijing or Shanghai or Hong Kong. Guilin is a little bit more South Central, and it's a city of about maybe 1.5 million people. It's oddly enough, it's about the same size as the city of Austin, where I live now. And it's located in central South China. It's really not very far from Vietnam. It's the closest city. It would either be Hong Kong or Shanghai, but it is more centrally located. And being inland, the river was really critical to the development of Guilin. A lot of the marketplaces and things were built along the river, and the river was used for trading and for bringing food and trading and bringing goods and things along the river. Guilin of course, has famous landscapes. They're called karst formations. They call them mountains, but they're really like big boulders, big rocks. And they surround the city, so you can see them on the horizon a lot of times. The government of China has protected the environment there because they thought it was so beautiful. And so there is not a lot of pollution as compared to some other parts of China. If you go to Beijing, for example, it's very crowded and there's a lot of pollution and there are no protections. So you just have to deal with it. It's kind of like any other big city in the world, but Guilin, because of its environmental value to the culture of China, they sort of protect it, and is a bit cleaner and easier to get around and enjoy the landscape. The city got its name in the Qin dynasty about 200, maybe 220 BC. Its name actually means forest of sweet osmanthus, and it's named after the osmanthus flowers. They're actually trees that grow in abundance in Guilin. It is full of these osmanthus plants. Osmanthus, if you haven't heard of it, it's edible. They make it into tea, but you can also just eat it as a plant. I was lucky enough to be there when the osmanthus were blooming. They bloom in the autumn, actually about this time of year, November timeframe. And I used to joke that they really stunk up the place. They're actually very fragrant. It's a lovely fragrant smell, which at times engulfs the entire town. As you walk along, because Guilin is a little bit hilly in spots, and you will hit places where you'll just be walking and all of a sudden you'll just smell the osmanthus through the air. It permeates the air. It's really a nice smell. So getting to the images, I'm sort of I love abstract photography, and I also have been a painter. I paint sometimes, paint, draw, and take pictures. So I tried to, while I was in Guilin, also craft some images that were maybe unique to me. This is an image of bamboo. I love doing sort of what they call intentional camera movement, moving my camera while the picture's taken to get these sort of abstractions that look very painterly. I was actually enamored with the bamboo groves in Guilin also because of the colors. There's a lot of sort of old growth bamboo that has greens and blues and sort of this aqua teal color, plus also, of course, a lot of white. And that makes for really interesting paintings. This, I had also visited a town called Longshan, which is up in the Rice Terrace area. It's an area they call the Dragon's Backbone. And up here I found that apart from being ancient rice terraces, which were carved into the landscapes, I think they're like 800 years old, they also dried a lot of the food. They set a lot of the food out to dry. So this is corn drying out in the sun. I found a lot of corn and other food out in the sun that they would dry out, apart from the rice. And this is some of the architecture you can see here. This is a tile roof. China is very famous for this sort of semicircular tile rooftops that you can see in this image here. And of course, behind the rooftop or beyond the rooftop is the gently sloping hills of the Longshan area. The Longshan rice terraces were actually built into the mountainside. And you can sort of make out the rice terraces from here, although there also are some trees in this image. This is a reflection in the Li River. When I started photography, I did a lot of reflections. It's a thing of mine. I love the reflections because you get to see sort of what's behind you, what's in front of you, the thing itself, the reflection. And then it also makes it abstract. It's very painterly, and I'm a very painterly photographer. So this is another image that I really love. It's the texture that you see here is actually grass floating in the river. I tend to print this image on rice paper, and it's very popular in my shows. I had done a show, an exhibition of my work from Guilin in New Hampshire at the Camera Commons Gallery in Dover. And this was one of the images that was selected to be in that show. And I printed it on the rice paper, of course, and it looks very lovely on rice paper because it has the particulates, given that it's the grass floating in the river. This was taken at the mountain retreat where we stayed. And here you can see the river, the people raft along the river. It's pretty common. But this was actually the hotel, from the hotel where I stayed. And it was very lovely because we were right along the banks of the river, and you could walk out and they had sort of these terraces that you could sit and enjoy a cup of tea or something and watch the little boaters go by on the river. And of course, you got to see the beautiful mountains in the background. Those are the karst formations that Guilin is famous for. This is also from the same place. This is a boat dock where you can catch the rafts and float along the river. When I was there, the river was actually very low. There was sort of a drought going on. So we decided to not spend a lot of time on the river itself. We didn't want to go boating and whatnot because the river wasn't its normal full self. But we did enjoy the scenery along the banks of the river, and also, of course, seeing the mountains in the backdrop. It was really very lovely. This is at the top of the rice terraces. You can see the architecture here. As part on top of the rice terraces, they built a small village, and we got to go up there and spend a day up there. I actually spent my birthday up there, so it was kind of fun for me. But you can see they have a lot of wooden buildings with a tile roof architecture. This is very indicative of the architecture that they have up in the Longshan area. Another thing to note is that these buildings are actually built on into the slopes of the rice terraces. So there, a lot of them have like steps and things, and they're actually built into the rice terraces. So the village actually runs along the mountain, the hillside. This is in the ancient city of Dashu. I got to visit Dashu, and it was really quite a photographic journey. The city itself is 1,000 years old. It's called the ancient village of Dashu for a reason. It is very old. And it has stone streets that are not really wide enough for cars. So it's mostly an excursion on foot to visit Dashu. And some people call it just the ancient village. It started out many years ago as a marketplace. And a lot of people would come, because it's right along the banks of the river, and a lot of people would come and trade, exchange goods. And there still are a lot of shops and things. Now they're mostly tourist shops. Not many people come by boat anymore, but it still is, of course, along the banks of the river. This is actually a hidden courtyard in Dashu. One of the things about Dashu is there's a lot of, the streets are very narrow, and there's a lot of doorways, and the buildings are all coupled together, closely together. And so there are a lot of interior courtyards. So I had gotten invited in to photograph in this courtyard, and I was very honored to be invited in. And so this is a private courtyard in Dashu, and you can see kind of how the architecture is. There's old columns, and this is basically a structure that's 1,000 years old. So I was really excited about being able to photograph in that sort of a place. Very lovely city. And here you can see, this is actually Dashu, the outside of the buildings. You can see how narrow the streets are. There are scooters and horses, but there are not really cars that can fit down the alleyway. It's mostly a pedestrian journey if you venture into Dashu, but it's really worth the trip. Before I had gone to Guilin, one of the things I did was I looked at some pictures of Guilin, and I had found some images of Dashu on the internet. And when I saw the little red hanging lanterns, I thought, oh, I've got to go to this place. This is looks just phenomenal, because they have these little red lanterns hanging in front of a lot of the places. And at the time I showed it to my mom and said, hey, I'm thinking of going to China. This is the place. And she saw the little red lanterns, and she said, oh, that looks just so darling. I could just see you there photographing. And if I were younger, I'd come with you. And so it was kind of an interesting exchange, because I was expecting her to say, why do you want to go to China? It's halfway around the world. And instead she, the red lanterns and the streets of Dashu just transported us to China. And I have to say, I really, really enjoyed my stay there. It was really a very picturesque town. They've actually filmed a couple of movies there. I think they filmed a Jackie Chan movie there, but it's sort of interesting. I really enjoyed it. They say the stones there have been trampled by horses and carts and people and footsteps for 1,000 years. And so the stones that you see here in the pavement are, have been trampled by maybe even Jackie Chan himself, who knows, but horses and people over the years. And scooters too. This is a little bit different of an image. This is actually a bridge in a place they call Seven Star Park, which is a big park in the center of Guilin. It's an urban park. Although it's modern and maintained, this is actually an ancient bridge that's been there for obviously a long time. It's not as old as Dashu, but it's still fairly old. You can see the typical architecture of the Chinese bridges here. This is the round semicircular bridge with the steps going up and steps on the other side over the canal. You find a lot of this shape in the bridges there. It's very common in the areas around Guilin. Now this is a temple dog. A lot of the temples are guarded by these temple dogs or dragons as well. They have little statues in front, marking the front of them. This particular temple it's called the Praying Sage Temple, and it's on the outside. It's in central Guilin, but it's in an area where not many tourists go. So if I stayed in a small hotel that was actually family owned. It was very small. It was like a boutique hotel. And it was right near the Chinese Language Institute, which were the people that were hosting us and who gave me my companions, my guides for the journey. And if you walk past the CLI, the Chinese Language Institute, there was a gate. And if you went through the gate, you were transported into this other world, basically. It was not an area that was very touristy. Part of Guilin is very touristy. There's an area in downtown along the river, and I have some photos of that as well in this presentation, but part of it is very much in the touristy area. There's hotels like the Hilton that you would recognize. But as you walk through our gate and beyond our gate, you went down this little back road that was really not very touristy at all. And along the road was built sort of markets into the path. And we called it the medicine market because it was basically supplies for Chinese medicine, which it actually was really anything from knickknacks to cigarettes to Chinese medicine, herbs, spices, food items. There's even some barbers and things like that, tailors, places like that. And along this journey, you would also come upon the Praying Sage Temple, which is this place guarded by this temple dog. And this Praying Sage Temple is actually built into the hillside, and it has a grotto that you can go into and see. A lot of the sculptures are built in the grotto itself. So it was really an interesting place to visit. And it was really one that not many Westerners get to see because it's sort of really off the beaten path. This is inside a temple. I was sort of enamored by all the streamers and the colors of some of the temples. I really enjoyed seeing a lot of the temples in Guilin. And this is in the temple, inside Seven Star Park, there's a temple complex. I thought this Buddha was really interesting because he has such a smiling face. He's a happy Buddha. In the Seven Star Park, there is a temple complex. And I say complex because I believe there's a school and also the temple itself. So the monks were in training and classes and things, but then they also have services there, regular services that you can attend. So I was there for part of the services and got to speak to some of the monks and some of the people in the study groups and things. But it's a big complex. So there are many buildings that make up the temple complex in Seven Star Park. And this was the Buddha in one of those buildings. And this is along the walk that we had taken. This is in the more touristy area, this Red Door. There's an area along the river in downtown Guilin that is more built up, and it has a lot of sort of Western hotels like the Hyatt, the Hilton and things, and Sheraton, I think are in there. And it's by the pagodas. They also have the sun and moon pagodas. And I actually photographed there at night a little bit because we thought that it would be better to shoot it at night instead of having, a lot of the touristy things that you might see in the touristy area. So we photographed there at night, and I'm really glad I got to do that. And one of the things about Guilin too is there's a lot of, there's something called the Red Tent Market, and there's a lot of sort of pedestrian markets that come out at nighttime. I thought it was really interesting because as you walk around, the city just lights up at night because there's a lot of outdoor marketplaces. It does have a mild climate. There's not a lot of snow in Guilin. I don't think it snows there. It's sort of like Austin. It almost has the weather of Key West, Florida, was what I was told. So it can be really hot and humid in the summertime, but it has a mild winter. So a lot of stuff is done outdoors because of that. And there's a lot of sort of markets and shopping done outdoors. A lot of times at night, they close up shops and put things on the sidewalk and have, sales and things on the sidewalk. But because of that, a lot of the city is also lit up at night. And it's really interesting just walking around at night in Guilin. This is along the river again, and this is the touristy area. This is the Sun and Moon Pagoda on the river in downtown Guilin. The Sun Pagoda, which is the bronze one on the left that you see here, is actually, I think it's the world's largest bronze pagoda. It's made entirely out of bronze. The moon, these pagodas are actually connected. There's a bridge that goes underneath. I thought this was really interesting. This is one of the more touristy areas, so you will see this photograph, I think, a lot more than some of my other work. But I thought it was really interesting to photograph, of course, on the river at night with the reflections and, of course, the beautiful well-lit pagodas. And this is this is one of the iconic images of Guilin. You will see this a lot. But I really enjoyed my time there, even though this was a more touristy area. We had a lot of fun walking the banks of the river. When I was down there, I got to actually I ate in a cave restaurant because they have a cave that you can go. They ferment whiskey in these jugs and they put them in the back of the cave. And then the front of the cave, they have a restaurant. And I had actually spent my birthday there. And I got on my birthday dinner, we went to the cave restaurant and they bought me a birthday cake, an American style birthday cake, which was kind of interesting because it was, I wasn't expecting a birthday cake. And then also in Chinese customs, they have something called longevity noodles, which are, it's just a soup with really long noodles in them. And the noodles are supposed to give you grant you like a long life. And so I had both the Chinese and American customs. I had the longevity noodles coupled with the birthday cake on my birthday. And of course, we were in a place where they brewed whiskey. The motto of the place was actually, I loved it afterwards. I remember it still. It was your stories and my alcohol. So points to remember. And this is the Red Tent Market again at night. This is, you can see the marketplace, how they have vendors, they have street food, they sell items out in front of the shops. And it's just really interesting to walk along at night and see all that's for sale and all the people. It's great people watching. And of course, the colors are really beautiful. Everything's really lit up at night. So fun. And this is up in Longshan. There's a lot of ethnic minority groups that live there and they retain their culture. So you can see this woman here is wearing this sort of pink woolen hat on her head. And that's a traditional hat. She's wearing the traditional dress that they've worn for, hundreds of years up in that village. And I had gotten actually invited into sort of her kitchen. This is her kitchen area. And I asked if I could photograph her. My Mandarin at that point still wasn't very good, but I had my camera. I just sort of pointed and said, like, hey, can I take your photo? And she was very, very willing to pose for me and very kind. And she offered us some soup as well, which we didn't want to. I didn't want to put her out, but it was very kind of her. She was very nice lady, and I'm glad I got a lovely photograph of her. And this is just on the other side of our gate that I was talking about earlier. This is just as you transition through our gate from my hotel. There was this little area. This is sort of the start of the medicine market. One thing about Guilin, there are scooters everywhere. I'm sorry, I didn't rent a scooter while I was there. Even though I'm not a very good scooter driver, it would have been probably a bit easier to do to get around the city because they're ubiquitous. They even have scooter lanes on the roads. They have like the cars going one way, the cars going another, and then scooter lanes on either side. And it's interesting because I don't think you need a license to drive a scooter, but you need a license to drive a car. So I was told, be very careful in the scooter lane. It's worth your life. But I didn't have any trouble. It was all good. I really love this area though. I don't know if you can see it, but sort of behind the scooter man here, there's almost a railing. And I spent some time sitting on that bench, just relaxing. Like my first day there, when I travel, sometimes I get really bad jet lag the first day. So usually I just go someplace and sit, like go to a park or something and sit and relax for a little while. And that's where I had relaxed and wore off my jet lag. So I remember that little sort of makeshift bench very fondly. And when I see it from this image, I can remember that day I sat there and just relaxed by the park. And this is in Dashu again. I was surprised to find a blue door of all things. There's not a lot of stuff that's painted blue in Guilin, but Dashu did have, because it's so old, maybe, there were a lot of different colors, a lot of stuff that was painted over and painted over again, and then also a lot of like peeling paint. So this I just thought was a really interesting blue door. And this was actually my room in the mountain retreat. I had this wonderful room that had a balcony that was overlooking the river and the karst formations. It was really very lovely. So I took a picture of it. This is the market in Dashu. There's a lot of the little homes have now been turned into sort of little markets, makeshift markets and things. And you can see they put items outside and sell things. And it can be a very touristy area, especially on the weekends. I think a lot of people go and just go shopping now. I guess it's been a market historically for 1,000 years. it's less so relying on the river, but there's still a lot of tourists and a lot of market. And this is the area up in Longshan. This is the path to up in the mountains on the top of the rice terraces. When we went to the rice terraces, they told us there was a lot of climbing to get up to the top. It was like Tillman said it was something like 50 stories up in the air, and it felt like that. It was a big hike to get up there, but you can see here kind of the path to get up to the top. This is along the way. It's not fully stepped, but in some places it is. And so we sort of hiked all the way up to the top, and this is the village that's sort of at the top. But you can see how the homes are built sort of into the side of the rice terraces, and there's just trails all through that you can walk around. It's really a very lovely place. This is a different place. This is, I bet nobody's going to guess what those plants are in the back. If you look in the very center of the image, that's something that you would expect to see in China, but you might not recognize. And it's actually tea. This was taken at the Tea Institute, and those bushes that you see are tea growing in the wild. On the left in this image, you can see there are those sort of triangular hats. And I put on one of those hats and went into the tea fields. And I had a guy named Kevin who was really interesting. And he showed us how to pick tea. And so I got to pick some white tea out of those bushes. And I had a hard time. It took me about 5 minutes to get a tea leaf, but I managed to do it. In Kevin's words, he said, I had quality, not quantity. And I'll take that. It was difficult to pick the tea, but I learned how to do it. But it was really interesting getting to visit here because we got to see how the tea was grown and how the tea was made and how it was harvested. And this is a big tea institute. They study tea. And I actually purchased some tea from here. So that was kind of interesting. And this is a more abstract image. I love to do these sort of images while I'm driving or while I'm moving, and sort of let the camera just act like a paintbrush and do a big brush of light. I did some of these in Guilin, and this is actually some of my favorite work. This year for the Austin Studio Tour, I submitted work that's all abstract. For those of you who know my work, I tend to be a very abstract photographer. That's not all I do, obviously. But I really enjoy the abstract qualities, and I always look for ways to make my work more abstract. And this is one way I found to do it. I love the sort of colors and the bright explosions of driving at night through the city. And Guilin, with its being so well lit and having, the outdoor markets and things, it just made for a really interesting paint by light. And this is something different. This is something called a wishing tree. What a wishing tree is, it's in a Buddhist temple. They write down their wishes, and then the idea is you hang it on the tree, and as the wind blows, the wishes blow into sort of the universe, and you hope that they come back to you, they come true and come back in that form. And in Seven Star Park, there was, by the Buddhist temple complex, there was a wishing tree. And so I was fascinated by this, and I stayed there and photographed it for a while. And this was one of those images. I really enjoyed staying there because while I was there, it was a windy day. It was a slight breeze, and the wishes were all blowing a little bit, and I could hear them blowing in the wind. I like to say that their wishes of 1,000 people were blowing in the wind while I was there, and that's probably true. There were probably 1,000 wishes on the tree. So. And this is a detail of a door and window. You can kind of see the architectural details that are found traditionally in China. They tend to use the patterns in the wood. They use a lot of sort of marquetry and parquetry in wood design as they work with the materials, the natural materials. And this is an interesting device, if you want to call it that. When you go up to Longshan, they take these things, these are bamboo, shoots of bamboo, and they cut them lengthwise and they stuff them with rice. And then they cook them over a flame. They basically like barbecue the rice that way. And if anybody ever offers you rice that was cooked this way, I would recommend that you grab the end of the bamboo and run away with it and eat it all yourself. Because I think to this day, this was the most delicious rice I've ever had in my life. It may be because Longshan is the rice terrace and the rice is so fresh. It may be because of the way they cooked it. I don't know, but it was really very delicious. Um, there's just something about it that made it just taste fabulous. And I had to photograph both the bamboo and the rice itself. I have photos of that in my book. I have a whole little section on food, and I split open and you can see the rice inside, and it was just delicious. Really very good. And this is a wet market. I mentioned the Medicine Market Trail and the temple that I had walked past. If you were to continue on that path, eventually you would come into what they call a wet market. A wet market in China is similar to what we have in the States called the supermarket, maybe. It's basically an open air market where they have refrigeration, they have water, so there's fish and things that are sold, and plus meat, also eggs and refrigerated items, things like that. So this is actually the dry portion of the wet market. You can see it goes all the way back, and there's stuff along the sides that are actually refrigerated, like eggs and things where they sell that. So this is the wet market of Guilin. And this is the medicine market. You can see this is before you get to the wet market. This is very close to the entrance to the wet market, actually. But this is the dry market part of the medicine market, basically. And they sell dry goods, and again, medicine items for Chinese herbal medicines. I don't know what a lot of this stuff is. It really escapes me. I believe there's some, like you can see cigarettes in some places, and some things are mushrooms. Other than that, I don't know what, a lot of times I don't know what I was looking at, but it was really fascinating to see how they sell, what was for sale and everything. And you can see it can be very bustling at times. You can drive, I believe, through this, although it's sort of like a dirt road, and it's not really wide enough for 2 cars. So they will come through. Usually they had deliveries with tuk-tuks. Or you can kind of see the cart on the right. It looks like a motorcycle cart kind of thing. That's how they get the deliveries into the medicine market area. But there are lots of little shops. Each sort of little shop that you see is independently owned and run, and they're usually family mom and pop type shops. So it was really interesting to walk along here, and this extended for maybe like a mile. So it was like a mile of this. They say when you travel, like part of traveling is getting lost in a place to where you forget, all your cares in the world, and you're just in that moment. And as I was walking through the medicine market, I really got lost in that place. It's sort of the land that time forgot in many ways. It was really sort of fascinating to me. And so part of me will always be lost in that medicine market. I remember walking along there just with my camera and bag, and I couldn't speak the language. I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't know what the food was. But I just kept taking pictures and smiling at everybody and trying to talk to the locals as best I could, and just enjoying it. It was really a fascinating journey into central China. This again is the day-to-day life that people live. It's not really the touristy area. There's no Hilton Hotel near here. This is how people in Guilin live, and it was really fascinating to get to see a slice of daily life, for me anyway. And this is, I call this my ride machine. Something funny happened when we were going up to Longshan. There were all these steps, and they have these cars. I think this is called a sedan car, but basically you can pay them, and they'll hike you up. You sit on this thing, they'll carry you. 2 guys will carry you up the top of the mountain. And they asked me if I wanted to go up the mountain, and I was like, no, I'm not interested. And Beth, who was Tillman's sister, was with me. And I hadn't noticed, but these guys at the bottom of the mountain sort of asked me, like, hey, do you want to ride? And I was like, no, thank you, And then I kept getting asked like 2 or 3 times. I didn't realize it was the same people sort of asked me. They were following me, and they kept asking me, do you want to ride? Do you want to ride? And Beth kept saying to Tillman, she's not going to ride up. She's going to walk. She's going to make it to the top, and she's going to walk all the way. And sure enough, as we got to the top of the mountain, the guys got like really angry, and I couldn't figure out why they were so angry. And Beth said, they've been following you. They figured you were going to peter out and give in and take a ride, and instead you just kept walking, and now they're mad because they went all the way up the mountain and they don't have a fare. And I was like, well, they could have told them that at the bottom, you know. But eventually they parked the little thing that they were gonna, you know, the sedan car, the sedan chair, and I took a picture of it. So I'm sure they're even more enraged now because I got a picture of their little thing, and I still didn't pay them for a ride up the mountain, but you know, maybe next time. And this is rice delivery in Dashu. A lot of the homes, as people live there, they get deliveries. I thought that was sort of interesting, and they just put the stuff outside people's door. So you'll see rice, or you'll see dry goods or things. Sometimes even milk, like sort of like the milkman will come, and you know, everybody has milk waiting outside their door when they wake up. It was sort of interesting. And this was a portrait I had done. This was outside the Praying Sage Temple. You know, I don't speak Mandarin very well, and this person did not speak English at all. So it was kind of interesting to have sort of a conversation with someone where you don't have a common language. I had always heard that like 60% of our language is nonverbal. And I guess I didn't really believe that, or I didn't take it to heart. But after this experience, I kind of did, because I shared a lot of information without really speaking the same language. And I thought that was another interesting aspect of my journey, because Guilin is a city where not a lot of English is spoken. You don't hear a lot of English. Sometimes when you go to places like Beijing or Hong Kong, even, well, Hong Kong used to be sort of English speaking. But Shanghai or a bigger city in China, there's a lot of visitors and tourists. And so you hear a lot of different languages. We did, like in the touristy areas, we heard, we met some British folks, and we also met some folks from Germany. We heard German being spoken. But as you get into the more private areas, or the areas where more locals are, you lose that. There are no, you know, there's no German, there's no American, there's no English being spoken. It's all just Mandarin. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting aspect to this, as well, as that as I traveled along the medicine market, these people who never heard English, the English language being spoken before, who live there, as opposed to the downtown sort of very touristy areas where sometimes people almost speak a few words of English. And this was at, we had gone to this place where that was an abandoned recreation center and got to photograph it. And I thought this was really interesting because they had this bow sort of tied up, and I use it as sort of the end of my presentation. That's all the photos I wanted to share. I have a video series coming up called Travels with Carol. It will be on YouTube. And it's linked from my Austin Studio Tour page, and it's also available at this link. And I will have travel guides coming soon. I will have a Guilin travel guide, probably Longshan and probably Dashu at some point. If you're interested in getting my travel guides, I would recommend you join my Facebook group called Carol's Little World Art Group. And to get access, all you have to do is, if you're on Facebook, go to Carol's Little World Art in the groups area, and you should see it, and feel free to join in. And in my group, I will be sharing travel guides, meditation sessions, and a few other goodies from time to time. So I'd recommend you do that. Now, if you're a photographer, I've set up a salon that will be sharing images. So that will be sort of an image critique area. So I'm branching out with the Facebook groups and using them in different ways. But for now, I have the Carol's Little World Art, and also the salon, as I'm calling it. Also, as part of the Austin Studio Tour, I'm doing a giveaway. You can enter at the following link, carolslittleworld.com, Austin Studio Tour 2021 giveaway. I'm giving away a 2022 calendar. I may also be doing a calendar of my China images. If I can get that together and launch it, I may be doing a giveaway of that as well. So you want to be on my mailing list if you can, or join my art group on Facebook to get access to the giveaways. I know everybody always loves the giveaways. So, and this year I have a lot of merchandise on carolslittleworld.com. It's not just prints. I have coasters and t-shirts and calendars as well that are all part of the tour. So feel free to check it out. And if you really want to see, if you want to see more of my travel work, you can go to carolslittleworld.com, and there's a gallery called Destinations, and that will have my travel images from every place I've been, almost every place I've been in the world. So, and I always look to add more as I travel. Thank you so much for attending. It's been great. I really love Guilin. I'm really happy to share it with you. It's been wonderful being on the tour this year. Thank you for supporting the local arts in Austin. And with that, I guess I'll stop recording and take any questions.